Information fueled,
opinion driven. This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
8:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends, along with Joan Jones, Johnny B, Dan Mandis here. Matthew Hurtt is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Matthew, always great to have you on. Just going to touch on a few political topics, and Donald Trump, the transition does continue. Matthew, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dan, and I just want to congratulate you and the team at WWTN for your excellent work on the Nashville Rescue Mission drive yesterday. Like $288,000, something like 101,000 meals.
Yeah.
Excellent work as we head into the Thanksgiving holiday for a population that is underserved. And what the Nashville Rescue Mission does is so important. So congratulations to you guys on what a successful drive that you had yesterday.
Yeah, it's not us. It's the listeners of WTN. And yeah, $288,000. To be more precise, $288,400 raised by WTN listeners. That does buy 101,000 meals. Thank you very much for everyone for donating. Special thanks, of course, to our sponsors as well. We couldn't do not only that broadcast, but we couldn't do what we do every single day without both of those folks, whether it's our sponsors or the listeners. So thank you very much for that, Matthew. Now let's get on to Trump's transition. So it's been a couple of days because we had the rescue mission yesterday. So there's Pete Hegseth is still in the running. Obviously, I don't know if he's sorry that he threw his name, accepted his hat being thrown in the ring for defense secretary. You think he's going to get confirmed? I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that are suspicious, and I don't need to go through that story yet again. People know what's going on with Pete Hegseth. To me, I think the woman's story, it has a lot of holes. But then you have to have the uncomfortable conversation about the fact that there's been a lot of infidelity in his marriages. So, I mean, there's that aspect of it too. Do you think he's going to ultimately end up getting confirmed?
I worked alongside Pete for several years at an activist organization where he was solely focused on veterans issues. And I can tell you, without going too far into the weeds, that organization had a level of operational security where they knew the kinds of things that their staff were doing both on and off the clock. And I think that Pete's response at the end of last week was pretty good. So the last time you and I talked about this, it is, was this going to become a distraction? I even saw into the weekend reporters still trying to make it an issue using what they knew to be fake or discredited lines of attack. I'll say this. I think that Pete is certainly doing better than Matt Gaetz was at this stage. It doesn't appear, from my perspective, that it will. Dan, it's complicated. I think that Pete has a good chance of landing in the administration. I thought that he'd be a better pick for Veterans Affairs, just given the totality of his work. Yep. And so if it were to come through the Senate, I think he would see more concerns about qualifications for the role specifically, rather than the questions about what I think are a distraction. The police report is pretty clear. Yep. There are plenty of holes in the story. This is something that I think, many people have flaws. Many people have bankruptcies and divorce and infidelity. It's an unfortunate situation, an unfortunate condition of human nature. And we are flawed people.
Well, please, senators, in Washington, D.C. and politicians by and large, let's please hand wring over some infidelity, because we know that by and large, Washington, D.C. very much is a den of iniquity. So, don't get me started on pearl clutching in Washington, D.C. That is just a joke. I think my 2 cents is I would agree with you on Veterans Affairs. However, Trump has made the decision that he's made. I personally believe that Pete Hegseth would be somebody who would be very good as Secretary of Defense. we'll have to see what they ultimately decide there in the Senate if he ends up going through the confirmation hearings. Pam Bondi, I think, was a great pick for Donald Trump. I think you and I already spoke about Pam Bondi, but I think she's going to sail right through as Attorney General.
Yeah, the headlines make it look like she's all set for confirmation. Of course, as I said the last time, these processes will actually kick in mid-January, and hopefully a good number of these folks will be confirmed by the end of January into early February. But it seems like the trade-out from Matt Gaetz' withdrawal to Pam Bondi's sort of nomination is a much more secure bet for the incoming Trump administration.
Do you know what I don't know what, because you and I have spoken about Scott Presler before, that Scott Presler is the guy who really brought out the vote in Pennsylvania. And so some people have said, will Trump tap Scott Presler to do anything within the administration? And I think that Scott, just like Robbie Starbuck here in Nashville, I think they do such great work outside of Washington, D.C. that I think Scott Presler needs to stay exactly where he's at.
There are some people who work well inside the infrastructure, and there are some people who work better relatively unconstrained by the scrutiny of the government infrastructure. I think Scott's in that role. I think that somebody like me, I'm in that role. People have asked me, do I want to go to the administration? The desire to serve, for the furtherance of protection of our Constitution and this American dream is strong with me, but I think that skills like what Scott has in the field and like what I do among grassroots activists are better suited outside of that official structure in complement to what a Trump administration would accomplish officially.
One of the things that Donald Trump has to do is, he's got to, fill his cabinet, and he's obviously well on his way to doing that. I think that some of his picks are, more unique than others. I think some are really good, and some, again, have been a bit of a challenge to digest. But he's got thousands of other roles that need to be filled. And how does he go about doing that inside Washington, D.C.?
There are two things that happen. First of all, there's a book called the Plum Book, Plum, and that shows every single role for which the president will make an appointment. There are thousands, 3,000 or 4,000 of these roles. A lot of the lower level, entry level, and mid level roles won't actually be filled until March, April, May of next year, after the confirmations take place, once there is a leader in the department who can make those decisions. But then there is a transition portal, which was made live earlier this week, I think over the weekend, and people can begin to apply. Now, it is a very rigorous process. You have to provide a litany of forms and things, but federal service, particularly under the Trump administration, I think is a noble thing, and there is now a way for people to apply to start that process.
While you were talking, and it's no disrespect, Matthew, but something caught my eye on the super text line. 7148, I don't know, apparently out of Arizona, but something has triggered 7148 this morning. And her last of 15 really long-winded, hate-filled texts ends with, like I say, I'm a DeSantis chick, not a Trump chump. So I mean, apparently TDS is still. These are like 5-paragraph text messages to yours truly just this morning. It's like, good Lord, clearly TDS is still strong in some folks on the right.
Yeah, here's the thing, Dan, and it may not be a surprise to some of your listeners. I voted for Ron DeSantis in the primary here this year in Virginia. I actually flew to Iowa and spoke on DeSantis's behalf in the Iowa caucuses. But this is something where, particularly in the way that we do politics and governance in the United States, President Trump very quickly got the nomination. It was very clear he was going to be the nominee. And not only that, but by millions of votes, the American people decided Donald John Trump deserves to be the president again. And so this is something where we can disagree in a nominating contest, but it was very clear very early in the process that Trump was going to be the nominee. And then millions more voters cast ballots for him than they did for Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. And he is going to serve as president for the next 4 years. And you can be okay with that, or you can shut up for 4 years, or criticize from the outside if you'd like. But I think that what we've got is Donald Trump is going to appoint people who may not have voted for him in the primary, and that's okay. It's okay to have, particularly in the Republican Party, mm-hmm. to have a wide view of candidates you like and policies you support. But in this political system, a winner-take-all, first-past-the-post, two-party system, you've got one or another choice, and the choice this time got into the White House, and we've got 4 years to do the right thing by the American people.
So let me ask you this, because I find it interesting. You've got Elon Musk possibly buying MSNBC. It is all over the news this morning, has been in the last couple of days. What do you think about that? You think that'd be, I personally think that would be good if he turned it into like, a cable version of X. Air America was a radio station or radio network a decade ago or more, and it failed. The market spoke. People didn't want to hear left-wing radio. MSNBC has fewer viewers in prime time than do some commercial conservative talk radio stations. The market is speaking there. And if Elon Musk were to buy it wholesale and staff the primetime lineup with Joe Rogan and other people, I think that would be, it's on par with the kind of trolling that Elon Musk does on Twitter or on X. But I think it would give the American people something else to see on TV, entertainment and news and commentary that would be interesting. I would watch it. I mean, I watch MSNBC now for the same sort of humorous content that I might watch a Musk-owned MSNBC. Yeah, it is kind of fun to watch. We were talking earlier, I don't know if you heard it, but we were talking earlier about the joy of watching Scott Jennings on CNN, because I think that he's just got a little bit more of a spring in his step, because he is surrounded by all of these people that just can't believe that Donald Trump won. And he's like the sole voice of reason. And it's like he's the teacher in an elementary school. That's what it's like with Scott Jennings. He's surrounded by all these immature people that just can't believe that Donald Trump won. And it's like he's looking at the camera and he's telegraphing to all the conservatives that are watching either his clips on X or whatever. And it's like he's telegraphing, you know what? It's a paycheck. I first encountered Scott Jennings as a regular listener of government-funded NPR here in the D.C. market, and I apologize. But his messaging last year in 2023 was so masterful to the NPR audience. And now that he's on CNN, he's very well equipped at sitting across 4 or 5 liberals and really just taking them to task in a way that is surgical, that he's really playing to the audience. Your average CNN viewer is middle of the road or left of center, and he does such an excellent job making the point with humor and with grace and with intelligence. He is certainly one of the best communicators and was one of the best surrogates for Trump in this campaign. All right, 8:21 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. Matthew Hurtt is joining us. Matthew, what do you got going on for Thanksgiving and coming back home to Murfreesboro? I will be back in Murfreesboro through the end of the week, spending time with family. I'm so excited about the opportunity to come back. But it is nonstop work outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I'm so excited about the opportunity we have to make America great again.